as life kind of unfolded, I felt like God allowed some of those things to happen to me so that I would be stronger later. When people come to me and say they have a problem, or people come to me and ask me for help, because you have gone through that, you are able to help other people. Hey, what's up? This is Brad with Be Real. I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth here a little bit. This amazing lady is my mother-in-law, Loretta Von Berg. I had to think about that for a second. Loretta Von Berg. And she has, at my asking, has offered to come in and do a quick podcast. And I'll tell you what it's going to be about. It's going to be about addiction. And what we would kind of like to achieve here is I'm going to give a little bit about my story. And then, a little bit what that looks like as far as my addiction and homelessness and that. And Loretta's going to jump in and kind of explain what that looks like from a parent side. So Loretta is, I'm not that nice to her in person, so I'll tell you.
Really, I like this right now.
Yeah, she's the matriarch of our family. She's the all adaptable tool. She is with Operation Hope. Mm-hmm. She's a realtor. She has 5 children. So you can imagine what that does, 1 million grandkids and all that, and is pretty much there at everybody's beckoning call. So great lady, super great to have her on here. When I met her the first time, my wife goes, so Mom, what do you think about it? She goes, you're not going to have too many boring moments. No, there ain't been too many boring moments,
Not lacking personality.
No. So some of you guys have heard. If you haven't heard, I'll just give you my short version because I really want Loretta to do the majority of the talking here. So my life was great when I was younger. Student council. I did basketball, worked 2 or 3 jobs, all through high school, no problems. Did drink a little bit, but it was not problematic, did not cause problems. Then I worked for Safeway for a long time, bought my own house. And then I feel like what kind of got me was a couple things that get me, in my opinion. There's a point in people's lives from like 18 to 25, and it's kind of the abyss where you're no longer a high school person or a younger adult. And then you're not quite considered to be like an adult, because I think 25 is kind of, once you cross over that, I think people make better decisions. And so I hit that period in my life, 18 to 25, and bought a house. But I got an outside sales job where it had very little structure. My bosses were in Oklahoma City. I had seen success at it. I was making money at it. But at the same time, I had no direct supervision, where when I was growing up at Safeway, you clocked in, you clocked out, you had 87 managers. I thrived in that type of environment. So I get to outside sales, and you start throwing money onto the deal. And I was an addictive person, which I ended up finding out later. I've been an alcoholic my whole life almost. So you start throwing more and more money onto it, more and more freedom onto it. It's a bad mix. You start hanging out with the wrong people, going to the wrong playgrounds. Next thing you know, I'm not doing all the little things they need me to do for work. Things don't work out. They give me an option. The people I was working for said, hey, dude, all you got to do is 30 days of rehab and you can keep your job. Well, I didn't want to come clean and tell everybody, so they fired me. And 1 year later, roughly, the sheriff throws me out on the streets. And, through the grace of God and a good friend, I was out there for about a year. And my little brother came and picked me up, put me on a Greyhound bus, sent me to Oklahoma City, and that's kind of the rest of the story. You would think after somebody saved me from that terrible situation, I would have never drank again. In fact, I remember riding down Turner Turnpike going, oh my, this is amazing. I'm leaving my bad friends behind me. I'm leaving, my bad habits behind me. I'm leaving, all the warrants for my arrest behind me. All these things are behind me. But I realized later in life that I actually transferred my biggest problem, which was me. And so I've only been sober for 10 years. And so anyway, that's kind of my story, right? And I always tell people that I really don't regret the homelessness or even the addiction part, because had I not been homeless, had I not gone through addiction, I wouldn't be who I am today. But I do greatly regret the time I wasted, finances I wasted, and the biggest thing I regret was, there was a year or two there, my mom never knew where I was, and my kids grew up with a functioning alcoholic, and, those are the things that I regret from my side. And so that's where Loretta comes in. Loretta's going to share a little bit because she was on the other side of that fence. And what does that look like? So after hearing that part, what would you like to say first?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I know your testimony, but hearing you replay it is always powerful, because I know who you are today. And you're amazing, and you do a lot of great things for the Lord, and you're just an amazing person. So, my testimony is that my son, starting at about 14, started experimenting with drugs, had some mental health issues. And by the way, I only have 4 children.
Oh,
you
man,
said
sorry.
5. Unless
I
I've
went
adopted.
to say that, and I started to think, and I go, Brad, you should know that. It's like when I go to the pharmacy and they ask my wife's birthday. I don't want to stall too much, so I just threw some out there. Humbly apologize.
I honestly have a lot of others out there that I adopt and care for, so that's okay. But anyways, my son come to me at 14, and he had started cutting on his arms, and we had seen behavior, anxiety and things like that. And right away, drug addiction began. And I had never really been around drug addiction or alcoholism. I grew up in a very close-knit family. My dad never really did anything other than come home and, spend time with his family. And so I really didn't have any of those, know anything about addiction. But when Brad started, I said when he turned 16, he took off like a car with no brakes. Once he could drive or be on his own, and it just seemed like it snowballed. And so I fought the side of addiction for about 18 years from a parent's side. And finally, when everything caught up with him and he was incarcerated after several things.
Help me with this, though. So he started when he was 14. How old was he when he was incarcerated?
Well, when he was 19, he had a vehicle accident, and a gentleman in the other vehicle was killed. And so, he had to live with that. We lived with that. And it just spiraled him deeper into addiction. So, from 15 to 19 doesn't seem that long, but it seemed like a long time to me.
If you're living in it.
Yeah. And, I think the parent's goal is just really to keep the child alive, because that you're going to get a call any moment that's, something's happened. And when I hear you say your mom didn't know what was going on for a year or so in your life, you're just like, oh gosh, I hope he's okay. I hope he's not under a bridge, overdosed, or so many stories I hear other parents talk about. Was my worst nightmare that I was hoping didn't come true. So when he was 19, he was incarcerated for a period of time for this accident, but he was able to get out, and he was on probation for 19 years. He ended up getting married, having a good job. He actually worked with us at the water park, and was doing really good. And then he started going through problems in his marriage. And so, as you know, when you hit that wall of problems, sometimes you just turn back to what's comfortable.
Sometimes you make the worst decisions in the worst situation.
Right. He was on 19 years probation. After going through his divorce, he started drinking, ended up getting a DUI, which since it was out of state, he didn't get his probation revoked, so he was going along. But then he just got further and further in. He never was really a drinker, but drugs was his go-to. And people would say, what, drug of choice? I'd say anything he could get his hands on. Yep. But he ended up really on meth, just hardcore meth. And so that went along until finally his probation was revoked. And he was taken into custody, not soon enough, because what's so funny with a parent, a lot of times, and I counsel parents that are going through this, and, they're so afraid that their child's going to be put in prison. And I say, that's not the worst thing that can happen.
No.
The worst thing that can happen is you bury them. That's the worst.
Oh.
So
I remember somebody telling me you said that yes, it was terrible, but you knew where he was and you knew he was safe.
Right, absolutely. And so, once he was in the county jail, actually, and a gentleman came in and prayed over him. And his name was Mr. Brown. I have it written down because he's in a nursing home. I'd love to go see Mr. Brown, but he prayed over him, and Brad called me and he said, Mom, a gentleman come in today. And even though we'd had him in church, we went to church, this gentleman prayed over him, and he said it was like God took my heart out, put it on a table, and reworked it. And so for me, I was doubting. I was a doubting Thomas because, after you go through so much and you hear so many times, I'm going to change, I'm going to do this. But I said, time will tell, and it did, and it really took. And even though he was incarcerated 8 years, he was in his Bible, he was talking to other people about Jesus, he was really just a changed person. And you've been there most of that time, so you see that. So I became really just a servant in the way that I knew God saved him. That God was the only one that could change him, because I'd had him in any kind of rehab that money could buy, and none of that worked.
Yep.
I think until an individual's ready to go through that and really make a change, it's not going to work. But to really put God in the center of it really made all the difference, because I think the strength that he gives is the only one that can give that kind of strength.
Yeah. That happened, but two things collided. God came in his life, and at the same time, he was done. In his mind, he was done. I mean, as far as, drugs didn't appeal to him. Drugs weren't the driving force, you know.
Yeah. He realized from that time, he had 2 little boys that I was taking care of, and a daughter from his marriage, his first marriage, who was with her mother. So at that time, he was alienated from his children. And I think that was really an impactful time as well. But
I like how she says no big deal on this. Like, I am interrupting people all the time. But that's probably one of the most selfless things I've seen happen in our family. So when Brad got incarcerated the second time, how old was Landon and Hunter?
Landon was 3.5 and Hunter was 2.
3.5 and 2. You don't have to tell me how old you were. 3.5 and 2. And she's already gone through this once. She's now a grandma. She's been successful her whole life at business. She's supposed to ride off into the sunset and start enjoying life. And she gets a 3.5 and a 2-year-old. And there was no question what was going to happen with those little guys, that she took them in. And, the only reason I bring that up is one of the greatest things I saw come out of this deal, which there was fruits, which I'll ask you later, was the fruits of those two, you taking on that, and how that is changed those two's lives completely, and actually given them a chance. I mean, they hardly were audible speaking. Health wasn't that great when she got them, and now they're thriving. Sometimes you want to, beat them, kids. No, I'm just kidding. But I love them. I mean, you can't help but love them. So anyway, that I didn't want that to pass by on this deal, that during all this turmoil, your son's about ready to go to prison, and you take on 2 kids into your house full time.
Well, and something you're only one thing you're leaving out. I was in a new relationship. So at that time, my husband to be was retiring. And so we were having all these plans about travel and things we were going to do. And whoosh, we have kids now and we have to keep a school schedule and all of that. So yeah, it was definitely something we had to think about, but it's been such a blessing to us that we did it. And I see other grandparents that are raising their grandchildren, whether from addiction or from an accident, and I just think, it's a blessing both ways because grandparents see their kids grow up and they think, wow, I wish I would have done this or I wish I would have done that. But then you have the opportunity to do it with your grandkids, and I think you're a little bit more, I know my kids say I'm more laid back with them, right? You've heard that from, because I was probably a stressed out mother since we traveled all the time and all that kind of stuff. But I would say about addiction, especially when there's other siblings involved, I feel like it wasn't just Brad and I going through this battle of addiction, but our other kids were going through it, and there's a dynamic of with Amber, your wife, and the younger kids, because they see things and they don't want their parents hurt or they don't want things that are happening to happen, and so they build up animosity towards the individual that's causing it. And so we had a lot of relationship rebuilding to do. Brad had a lot of relationship rebuilding to do. And in the beginning, he said, Mom, I don't know if I'll ever get there. But I said, just put one foot in front of the other and keep on doing the right thing. And he did.
Yeah, and he has. And you find, you see a tendency of, if you just keep doing the right thing, other things are tracking to you and God clears the path for you, Yeah. Same thing with my brother. I didn't even think about that till you brought that up. Same thing with my brothers. I think back now, which we all have a great relationship, but I remember, the cops showing up. I was living with my brother, Bill, part-time, and the cops showed up at his house, and, here's this guy. He's probably 21, got his crap together, has a great job, working his butt off. And now he's got the cops knocking on his door. And he's like, Brad, you got to go, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the end of the last place I had, to sleep, which is understandable. I say that all the time too, at least with my family didn't have the means, and this, this is 1986 or something like that. They didn't have the means, or they didn't know anything about this. So they were very ill-equipped to help me. But actually, it ended up being a blessing because, I always say the harder you hit bottom, the farther you bounce off the bottom. But anyway, I didn't even think about my brothers till you brought that up. So continue on. Maybe.
Okay. Well, I was thinking as you were talking about the word enabler, and I was a complete enabler. I have been. We talk about boundaries, and I've had to learn to have boundaries. And but I hated that word. I still don't like it, being an enabler, because I think a parent that's going through addiction with a child, they're thinking they're trying to keep them upright and alive. And like in Brad's case, when he had the two little boys, we were thinking about keeping a family unit together. But in all actuality, I was an enabler. And I had a phone call one time he was down in Stroud at Clay's Crossing, and he had come home to have some dental work. It was a sober living place, and he come home to have some dental work and got some drugs and took them back into Clay's Crossing. And I remember getting the call, because you think, okay, when they're in a facility, that's going to be the saving grace, excuse me. So you just automatically think, okay, they're there, everything's going to be fine, and their addiction's going to go away.
Let your guard down a little bit.
Let your guard down, that kind of thing. But so I got a phone call that he was getting thrown out because he took drugs back in. And I'll never forget the gentleman that called me. he was from Oklahoma City, but he come down and he did counseling with Clay's Crossing. And he said, let me tell you a story, Miss Murphy. That was my name at the time. And he said, my parents enabled my brother to his grave. He was 55 years old. And he said, you're going to enable your son to his grave if you don't stop. And I think that was really a defining moment for me to step back and look and say, I've got to let God handle it. Even though it still was there, I think his words were a defining moment for me to think I can't keep helping him stay in addiction.
But what do you think? What are two or three things? And before she starts too, I want to say I'll never forget, because she has faded heat from other family members for maybe how she might have handled the Brad deal. She said it two or three times, and it made me think about it. She goes, look, until you're in that situation, don't judge how I'm doing this deal. When you have to make a decision, what you're going to do with your son, if he's going to be in a homeless shelter, or you're going to be whatever, or you decide to bring him out, until you're in that situation and you have to kick your kid out or turn your back on your child, don't tell me you could do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I could. But anyway, just a couple of things, just so those people understand, what were a couple of things you enabled that you probably wished you hadn't done?
Well, I'll start out, in the beginning of his addiction, even before his accident, I actually tried tough love. I sold his vehicle when he wasn't driving it to the right places. For about a year, he dropped out of school. He ended up going to Colorado. For a year, I didn't know really where my son was. He was on the streets in Denver. And I was just, constantly worried and that kind of thing. So I did the tough love in the beginning, but it seemed like as time went on, I became the enabler. And I would say how I did that was constantly just being at his beck and call. Like, if he called me and said, I tried to only buy groceries,
Right.
Instead of sending money. Thank goodness we didn't have Cash App and all that stuff we have today, right? Because I would have been, I'm just sending more money, But I tell even ladies that I talk to about, even if they're in prison, if you're putting too much money on their commissary, there are, drugs in prison. I go into the prisons now with God Behind Bars and different organizations. And many times I see people high on drugs, and it's really sad because you're thinking if they're in there, they're not going to get it. Right. But so you can enable in all ways, but it was really hard for me to not be an enabler once children were involved, because then you're thinking, am I depriving the children? I'm talking his grandchildren. Yeah, his children. So that was really hard for me because I'm like, oh, they need food, they need diapers, and all of those things. So that was it, really.
And in no way am I judging, because I haven't been in that spot, and I'm just saying from the other side that when you do those things, I'm no way judging. But there's a deal about knowing that if you're in a situation and there's absolutely no safety net, and if something happens to you again or you do something again, you're going to be in deep peril, Mm-hmm, and probably for Brad, he probably thought, she's going to be there.
She's going to bail me out. Yeah. Yeah, I see that.
What's one of the positive or fruits that have come out of this such a terrible situation?
Well, I would say for 2/3 of my life, I wasn't really probably doing what God wanted me to do. And, when the storm calmed and it just so happened that my career slowed down, I really felt like every experience that I went through with Brad and addiction, I'm able to use now to help other people, tell other people about it. And I just really feel like, when I've asked God, why has this happened to me? What did I do to deserve this, Lord? I really feel like his message was, if you just got out of my
Mm-hmm.
way, I would have handled it a lot sooner. And so when I talk to other parents, I really, sometimes I feel like I'm being harsh, and I try not to, but I hear them just, staying in the same
The same thing
situation.
over and over.
I call it Groundhog Day. You wake up and it's like Groundhog Day, because it's like, well, my son did this or my daughter did that. And it's just like, and so nothing changes. And so the biggest thing that I've taken away is I would have worked on myself
Mm.
more, uh, because we don't realize, first of all, the addiction is not about us. We shouldn't blame ourselves for it. And that's one of the things they say in Finding Hope. It's not your fault. And so many times I think parents think, what did I do? Did I not spend enough time with my child? Did I, uh, you know, definitely in my case, did I work too much? I was away quite a bit. So you start blaming yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing, is for people that have loved ones of addiction, is not to blame themselves and to work on themselves to be stronger and not be the ones that are keeping the addiction going or helping keep the addiction going.
I didn't realize that till now that you and I have more similarities because she's an extremely strong person, and I'll say that try it without crying. Um, but you know, I felt that in my life, my whole life. I didn't go through all that crap to make me stronger because I was already a stronger person. As life kind of unfolded, I felt like God allowed some of those things to happen to me so that I would be stronger later. And when people come to me and say they have a problem, or people come to me and ask me for help, there's a bridge that, because of my crappy things I went through, there's a bridge that is able to be built into where they are. And there's something about they will
Mm-hmm.
listen to somebody, like you were talking about, talking to other parents, and they're
Mm-hmm.
going through that. Well, what are they going to do? Argue with you? You went through it.
Right.
It's called
Right.
experiential help, experiential knowledge. Because you have gone through that, you are able to help other people. You
Yeah.
know?
We have a PhD in
Yeah.
it. Really.
Yeah, in my own screw ups. I hope you guys caught that. She helps with Operation Hope, and then she does Finding Hope, which is a group of parents that get together to cope, right?
Loved ones of anyone in their family with addiction, and it's also tied to Hope is Alive, which you are part of that as well.
Yeah.
So I think that, God wants to take our experiences like this and teach us how to teach other people going through it. Because so many times, I mean, I've talked to ladies in our group, and they're like, oh, this has really given us hope that, you can come out on the other side. And, even if your child doesn't get out of addiction, you're building the strength you need to be able to, and the tools you need to be able to handle it. So
I
that's
put it
really
in kind of in
important.
this perspective of light. You're in this dark place, but when you come out of this dark place, you are able to, and you are able now to light other people's paths
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
you can help them go where they're going, and the light being shown on you because of the successes and things that you've gone through and the success you've gone through. You're now able to shine that light into the darkness.
Yeah.
Um, what is there anything else you want to say about addiction and motherhood or any of that before I ask a couple more questions?
The only thing I would say is, being able, I say it's a blessing to be able to go into the prisons and talk to inmates, whether it's women or men. So many of them have had terrible childhoods. And, I said I had a great childhood. You had a good
Oh yeah.
childhood. So there's so much misunderstanding, because I do feel like people kind of like stereotype the fact that if someone's in prison, they're there for because they deserve it. And many times they do. Most of the time they do. But also just to understand people better, that they've sometimes used drugs and alcohol to mask a lot of hurt in their life. And I think that's made me a better person to.
Yeah, that's kind of where it stems from. They were hurt as kids, so then they make it with a mask with alcohol and drugs, and then when you're high on alcohol or drugs, you end up making bad decisions.
You do crimes.
And I said that about, and there are people like you said that, that are very dangerous people that deserve to be in prison and should be in prison for the safety of our, the United States. But at the same time, for me anyway, there are a lot of people in prison that did the same things I was doing.
Right.
I didn't get caught.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of people in there that were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and God just happened to spare me. But there again, I feel like God spared me. In my opinion, it's a waste. If you don't share a blessing, if you don't share a gift, it doesn't become a blessing. And so that's what my attempt is, and that's what you're doing too.
Yeah.
You have a gift, but it's only a gift for you unless you share it, and then it becomes a blessing. What's one thing you would like when this race is over for your kids to stand up and say about you?
Well, I would say that I was a good servant for the Lord. That I feel like for many years I was in a platform I could have told a lot more people about Him, and for whatever reasons, you don't necessarily when you're younger. If you're not walking in relationship, but that's what I would hope that they would say. She was a good servant for the Lord.
I realized this when my little brother passed away. Then at the end of the race, when people stood up and talked about my brother after he passed, all they talked about was the great times they had spent with him and the things he did to help other people. And so my prayer would be that, which everybody does, but my prayer would be that the family continues to realize, just how much you've been there for them and how much you've done. My mom was a single mom. Mm-hmm. She didn't have the means to do what you were able to do for your family. She didn't have the tools that you had that you were able to do for your family. So I hope that they continue to realize that, which this isn't prescripted. I just hope we all do, because unless we're grateful for the things that are happening in our lives, then better things are not going to continue to happen.
Right. And I loved your sweet mama. I always enjoyed the time that I had with her. But, we all have tools that we're raised with too. And that's something that people need to understand is the tools that we're raised with is what we take on to our family. And I learned that too at a young age. So I felt really like I was fortunate to have that, have a country, grew up in the country and had a good home life. But I think those are all tools that we take on with us. So.
What's something that you would, if you could go back and talk to the younger Loretta, wherever it is, high school, first got married, when you had kids, if you could go back and talk to the young Loretta, a younger Loretta, what would you tell her?
Well, I had a principal that put a little note in my diploma, and it said, don't try to conquer the world, but hold on really strong. And I think when I was younger, I thought, I was going to just conquer everything. And I didn't really pay attention to what I myself needed to do. I was more worried about what other people were doing and, got caught up in really the people around me, what they were doing. But I would worry more about myself, making myself a better person.
I probably, and nobody's asked, but I probably, if I went back, I would have, because I'm a worrier, which I shouldn't be. I work on it nonstop, but I would have gone back and go, bro, it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Everything's going to be okay. Like everything you're hoping for, dreaming for, 18, 19 years old, there's going to be some terrible, terrible things that you go through. But in the end, the majority of what you're hoping and praying for right now are going to come, Yeah. So then you wouldn't have all that. Anyway, the other thing, we'll wrap this thing up. Loretta, thank you for coming before I wrap this up. But I want to ask you something because I feel like, I hope a lot of parents listen to this. What are 2 or 3 bullet points that you'd really like to share with people? This, and this, coming from where you've came from. What are 3 things, or reiterate things that you said during this podcast?
Well, one thing is I feel like mental health with our young people is a it's a big deal. And, sometimes we get our kids into doctors and they get them on medication, and some kids need medication. But I would really say to focus, if your child is ADHD or whatever it might be, high anxiety, like you're talking about, that's probably a very big reason why you
Yes.
tipped the bottle. Is for parents to be more aware of mental health and to try not to medicate their child, because that takes away their real creativity. And I know they have to be sometimes to sit in the classroom, and I've had to do that with the grandchildren, the two that I had. But I would say to be aware, to read up on mental health and understand that, because mental health is really what leads to these addictions and things. And I'm really glad that we're going through now and really revamping our diets and talking about that. I wished I would have been more aware of those kind of things with my kiddos, because they drink pop and did all that stuff, that just wasn't aware of as much. But then, as going through it, I just wish that I had the knowledge now or I had the knowledge then that I have now. I think, as we get older, we're like, wow, I wish I'd known this back then. So I always say it.
What is one thing, not to put you on the spot, what is one thing you would like to share with somebody that's knowledge that you learned from these situations? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, there's so much. It's so, we need to write a book. What's the biggest one?
Yeah.
The biggest one is, I think, just to be able to have some peace in the chaos.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's really, because I see parents that they'll go through, you're going through addiction with your child, and it's just chaos and it just creates more, it seems like. But I think really to learn how to pull back, really ask God for strength and wisdom to be able to pull back and know how to handle things differently. I think if I had been in a closer relationship with the Lord, I would have handled things differently.
No, those are great. Those are great. Thank you for your time. I said that because you said earlier, you wish you would have had the calm in that, and I think that's a big deal. But it's hard when you're in the middle of that storm to stay calm.
It is.
And Amber and I were talking, just to reiterate what you said, Amber and I were talking this morning about mental health and counselors, and I really believe this. I believe probably half the kids in Oklahoma, if they would spend a little bit of time with a counselor or a professional, because there's a lot of anxiety out there. There's a lot of fear out there in young people. There's a lot of, and yes, some of it's self-imposed phones. We won't go over all that. But I think, there's another organization that saved me, which is Celebrate Recovery, and they do hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And I'm like, well, hell, everybody's got those.
Yeah, we could all go to Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Rita. I love you. Thank you. This has been an amazing deal. We've known each other 17 years plus, and I feel like I know her better than I ever have. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If this has blessed you or you've gotten something out of this, please encourage somebody else to watch it, not to glorify us or get more views or anything like that. But I really feel like the things that she was saying were things that other people might hear or need to hear. So you guys go have a great day. Be real.